The gangway creaks under your boots, and behind you the dock, the last solid ground you'll stand on for months, gets smaller with every step. Ahead of you, a hull that rises higher than anything else on the waterfront. Steel for as far as you can see in either direction, and somewhere inside it, 20-some people you haven't met yet, who are about to become the only people in your world, not a rotating cast of coworkers you see and then go home from. For the length of this contract, they are the whole of it. You sign the articles at a table below decks, pages of a contract that will run somewhere between 4 and 9 months, capped by international law at 11, no matter what anyone tells you at the hiring hall. There's a medical exam first, because the company needs proof your body can survive what's coming before it lets you try. Then the mess room, and a first meal with strangers who already know each other's names, habits, and running jokes. You are the one who doesn't know anything yet. Nobody on land thinks about this ship, and that's more or less the point of it. Somewhere between 80 and 90% of everything traded in the world, depending on whose count you use, and both are legitimate, moves by sea on vessels exactly like this one, carried by a workforce almost nobody pictures when they picture global trade. You're now part of that workforce. No certificate comes with it, someone senior explains. In the offhand way people explain things they've stopped thinking about. Who actually runs this ship? The master signs off on everything. Below the master sits a chief officer, who owns the cargo and the ship's stability. Then, a second and third officer, splitting the hours of navigation between them. On the deck side, below the officers, a boatswain, everyone just says bosun, decides what you do with your hands each day. You've come aboard an ordinary seaman, the entry rank, with nothing required of you yet but a basic safety course. The rank above you, able seaman, takes 18 months of sea time and a real certificate to earn. For now, you're the one being taught. What surprises you is how little of any of this runs on instinct or old sailor's tradition, the way you might have pictured it. It runs on law. International rules require at least 10 hours of rest in any 24, and at least 77 across a full week. And if that rest gets split into 2 pieces, one of them has to be 6 hours or longer, because anything shorter doesn't actually let a body recover. It sounds bureaucratic until you understand what it's really protecting. A ship isn't just steel and cargo. It's people whose exhaustion is written into international treaty, because for a long time, before the rule existed, that exhaustion is exactly what got people killed. Once a month, without fail, the whole crew drops what it's doing for a fire drill and an abandoned ship drill. Not because anyone expects a fire or a sinking that week, but because the law that governs this ship assumes competence has to be rehearsed to mean anything. You find your muster station, you find your immersion suit, you find out how slow you actually are the first time you try to put it on under a countdown. It isn't treated as a formality. The instructors who ran it clearly have, at some point, needed it to be real. The rhythm that follows is 4 hours on watch, 8 hours off, over and over, on a clock that has stopped caring what time it is. Anywhere on land, day and night blur into something closer to a loop than 2 separate things. In the first days, your body still believes it's on solid ground, and it isn't shy about telling you otherwise. For most people, the rolling nausea eases within the first several days at sea. Once the inner ear finally accepts that the horizon is allowed to move, nobody tells you, before you sign on, how much of becoming a sailor is simply your own body slowly agreeing to the sea. Your first watch completely alone comes sooner than feels reasonable. Lookout duty, required by international law on every bridge, every watch without exception, and at night, with no coastline, no lights, no fixed point anywhere in 360 degrees. You understand for the first time what open ocean actually means. It isn't the postcard, it's total. There's nothing out there to measure the dark against, and for 4 hours the entire job is standing inside that nothing and staying alert to it anyway, because the law that put you there doesn't care that there's nothing to see. Long before the ship reaches any particular danger zone, though, you absorb a quieter number, the one that actually shapes how you move around this ship every day. Every single watch. Workers at sea die on the job at a rate several times higher than people working on land. Not mostly from anything as cinematic as a storm or an attack, but from illness that has nowhere fast to go, from people lost overboard, from ordinary accidents with machinery that doesn't forgive a slow reaction. That's the real, unglamorous shape of danger out here. And it's why every rung of training you sat through before you ever heard the word pirate was really about this instead. Watch your footing, secure the load, don't get complacent near the rail. Weeks into the contract, the ship enters water that gets flagged before you're anywhere near it. A stretch where, in one recent year, well over half of all piracy incidents recorded worldwide happened in this single passage. You feel the ship change before anyone announces anything. Extra lookouts get posted. More eyes on deck than the watch normally carries. Radios that usually sit quiet stay manned and live. Channel open, conversation drops. Not fear exactly, something closer to focus. Hours pass like that, watching, listening, saying almost nothing. And then more hours pass. And nothing happens. No alarm. No boarding. Nothing that would make a story back home. Just the strait behind you, and the crew's forced quiet slowly loosening back into the ordinary noise of a ship that has nowhere urgent to be. It takes a moment to understand that this isn't an anticlimax. This is the job functioning exactly as designed. Every extra lookout, every manned radio, every hour of forced quiet. That was never leading up to an event. It was the event. Hundreds of trained people on this ship and every other one crossing the same water today, doing their jobs well enough that nothing happens is the actual, intended result, not the absence of one. Later, in a rare stretch where the signal holds, you get a call through to someone back home. A familiar voice, breaking up slightly on the line. For a few minutes, it doesn't matter that the connection is bad or that neither of you has much news, only that the other one is there. It's a small thing. And it isn't small at all. Reliable contact like this is one of the few things shown, again and again, in ongoing surveys of working seafarers. To measurably ease the loneliness this life runs on, you hang up lighter than you've felt in weeks, still smiling a little, at nothing in particular. And it's in that lighter moment, oddly, that the harder truth surfaces, not because anything happens to you, but because you finally have the headspace to think about the industry you've joined. In one recent year, over 3,000 seafarers were simply abandoned by the companies that hired them. Left on ships in foreign ports with no pay, sometimes no food, no way home, across hundreds of vessels worldwide, and the following year was already on pace to be worse. One single country's ports logged more than 40 of those cases in a single year. Inspectors recovered more than $13 million in unpaid wages for abandoned crews that year alone. Money that should never have needed recovering in the first place. It isn't a rare scandal. It's a structural risk built into how this industry runs, one that every person who signs articles takes on whether or not it ever lands on them personally. A large study of working seafarers, spanning ranks and flags and vessel types, found a real and measurable share reporting thoughts of ending their life in just the 2 weeks before they were surveyed. And the people newest to this career, the same research suggests, are especially exposed to it. Nobody mentions any of this at the hiring hall. You learn it the way you learn most things out here, from the people who already have. Months later, the contract ends the way contracts do, not with an incident, but with a date on a calendar. You walk back down the same gangway you climbed the first day, and the geometry is identical, and the feeling isn't. The dock feels unfamiliar under your boots. The particular strangeness of solid ground after you've gone long enough without it. The strange thing is, the ship behind you doesn't feel unfamiliar at all anymore. It feels like the place you just left. Home, of a kind. Even now, right now, close to 2 million people are living some version of exactly what you just lived. The watch clock, the strait, the call that mattered more than it should have. The risk nobody put in the recruiting pamphlet. Some of them are on their second contract. Some are on their 20th. Some, like you, are counting down the days on their first. Whether you'll be one of them again isn't something this story can answer for you, but having lived it even like this, you understand, from the inside, why so many of them keep going back.